Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.
Hello, I'm Lorene Mills, and welcome to Report from Santa Fe. My guest today is Deborah Madison. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Lorene. Thank you.
You have been writing about food for 30 years?
Probably
Yes.
that long.
And you write the most exquisitely beautiful cookbooks. We'll show some of them in a minute, but they're really a luxurious feast for the eyes, not to mention the feast they represent
thank you.
in your recipes. You've written 14 cookbooks?
Yeah, I have.
You've gotten so many prizes, the Julia Child Cookbook of the Year. Which one was that for?
It was for two. It was one for the Savory Way and the other for Vegetarian Cooking for Everyone.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute, too.
Okay.
You've gotten 5 James Beard Awards and the André Simon Memorial Award and Les Dames d'Escoffier Award, which is it fascinates me. But not only do you write and cook, you are the founding chef of the very famous Greens restaurant in San Francisco.
I am.
And tell me what you did a restaurant here.
Cafe Escalera with David Tanis. And I decided to be the pastry chef because I like doing pastry, and I got a quieter niche in the kitchen.
Oh, good. Are you trained at Chez Panisse?
Yeah, I did.
Wow, that's street cred for sure. And you, what was your relationship to the Santa Fe Farmers Market?
Well, when I first moved here in 1990, I went to the market. The first day I was here, I overheard somebody say, I could really use some help running the market. And I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, I could help. Because it's why I moved to Santa Fe. I lived in Flagstaff before then, and there was no farmer's market, and I really missed it. And so I decided, well, why not volunteer? And it was a wonderful thing
yes,
for
and
me.
It has continued to grow. And it's just so much fun. One book I want to mention because it is an encyclopedia, literally. This is a new version of your seminal classic, the new Vegetarian Cooking for Everyone. And it's a big, beautiful, rich book. So when was the first one written? This is the new improved.
I can never remember. 97, I think it came out. But things have changed a lot, since then. And I know that book gets used a lot by a lot of people, but I didn't want it to be so dated that new ingredients weren't included that we have. And, food fashions change. Stir fries were very big when I wrote that. They're not so big now. I'm not a stir fry person, so I took some of them out. I put other dishes in. It was a lot of it is essentially the same. It's really kind of a vegetarian joy of cooking. It's a soup to nuts sort of book, but it's updated.
Well, many critics and other chefs say it really broke new ground because at the time you wrote it, vegetarian cooking had a very bad rap. It was brown rice and yeast and things like that. And you really kind of refreshed the whole field. One thing that I'm fascinated with, because you are such a good PR person for vegetables and vegetarians, but you are not yourself a vegetarian.
No, I always have said I'm not a vegetarian. I have been a vegetarian. I mean, I was at Zen Center for pretty much a long time. But when I had a chance to, I ate meat, and it really taught me how to cook vegetables. Because meat's very different. It has muscle, it has texture, it doesn't have the sweetness that vegetables have. I also got tired of being asked, do I get enough protein? It's just not an issue. I didn't want to talk about that all my life. And also, when I started, vegetarian was a word that really pushed people away. It really scared them. And I didn't want people to feel scared or that they had to apologize. So I said, I'm not a vegetarian either. It's fine. What I eat at home tends to be, mostly vegetarian. That's what I like. But I'll eat anything I'm served.
Yes. Speaking of eating anything, I just want to mention this. This is the book that first made me fall in love with you and your husband. You wrote this charming book, What We Eat When We Eat Alone, and your husband Patrick did these beautiful illustrations.
He designed the book, and he wrote a lot of it, too. Because if you'll notice, I'm sure you have, some chapters are very much about what women do.
Yeah.
Other chapters are very much about men do. And I think Patrick really had had a good feeling for what men eat when they eat alone. And I was
Well, for
different.
me, it was a revelation. I think it started, you had a college class where your professor had people write down what they...
No, actually, we were on we were part of a think tank called Old Ways Preservation Trust, and we were traveling in Europe, and everybody had a resume, so Patrick couldn't really try to break the ground by saying, what do you do? Because
Yeah.
I mean, everybody there had been written about. So he'd say, well, what do you eat when you eat alone? And he'd make notes. I found them years later, and I said, wow, this is interesting. What are these? And he told me, I said, we should do a book.
Absolutely.
Because it's just fun to talk with people, all kinds of people, strangers, people kids, older people, your mother, whatever, and ask that question, and you learn so much.
Well, also, there were some basic gender differences, weren't there?
Yeah.
Can you recap them for us? And
Well,
then we'll move on to your new book.
okay.
But I learned so much from this.
Well, as Patrick would say, he said, you have the cheeseburger diet. Men tend to eat the same thing day after day and not mind, So one person we interviewed was a bartender, and his dish was a flank steak rolled up with cheese and bacon and then grilled. And I thought, oh, my God, so we tried it, and we served it to 8 people. He ate on it all week long, so that was kind of a difference.
Yeah.
I think women tend to be a little bit more predictable, white wine, salad, but a little more variation perhaps than men. And there's also some sentimentality attached to the equipment they use. Like one woman would say, oh, this was my grandmother's skillet. She always made omelets and that. And I do too, This was very odd to Patrick.
Yes. Also, there was an element of people who really ate at the refrigerator or over the sink. They did not even sit down.
Yeah.
And one of the favorite foods of people that you found was a man who liked to eat oyster crackers crumbled up in coffee mate. That was like the stuff of nightmares for me.
I thought so too. But actually, as I asked people about that going on tour, it turns out that was a real depression way of getting some nourishment. And you crumple saltines or oyster crackers or bread or something into something hot, and you drink it, and it fills you up.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it's filled up my heart. This is your new book, In My Kitchen, a collection of new and favorite vegetarian recipes. This is a recipe book and a memoir. You have wonderful stories in here. Tell me about, and again, it has your beautiful photograph. I mean, you didn't take them, but beautiful photographs.
No, I said I'm not having anything to do with styling the food this time. I want a professional to do it.
Well, there's stories about all these recipes.
Yeah, well, my editor at 10 Speed had said, why don't you do a book that has more talking in it, more writing in it, and which I was very happy to do because I'm really tired of writing recipes, and and to me the headnote is always the most interesting part to write, because it's a map. You're telling people where they're going to go. You might even tell them where they've been, and I had the space to do that. So, for example, black bean chili. Now, this was a favorite dish at Green's for years. Many, many, many people copied it and used it in their restaurants. And I was asking myself, why did we use black beans? I think it's because they were the only exotic bean we had at that time. It would have been just as good with white beans or with pintos, but black beans gave it this great look and flavor. Yeah. And but today we have so many more kinds of beans, and I happen to love the Rio Zapes, which are these great big beans that Stephen Sando gets, and I get from him. He's in Napa Valley, and it makes a different kind of chili. It's more robust, it's bigger, it's meatier because of the size of the beans. So there are lots of little stories like that. How recipes changed because of a mistake, or for example, there's an Anna's shortbread in there, which is a fairly new recipe for me. It's in vegetable literacy, actually. And these two gals were making it at Rancho La Puerta, a resort in Mexico. And I went to check to see how they were doing, and there's all these big black seeds. And I said, what are those? They had taken star anise and taken the seeds out and put those in. I said, someone might break a tooth on that.
Yes.
I don't know. So let's take them out. But let's use the star anise to make impressions, and let's use anise seeds for the flavor. So we did that, and it made such a pretty little dish.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought, I'm going to put that in there.
Oh, yeah.
So some of these are recipes that have a new twist because we have a different ingredient, or because something happened that was unexpected and turned out to be a really good idea.
Well, the stories, I was reading it so much for the stories, and I realized that people really have a hunger for stories, just like they have a hunger for good food. But when you combine the two and you tell an intriguing background story, then people say, well, I'm going to try that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I should ask you, what stories stuck with you?
Well, the star anise one in particular, because that's something I use in meats. Mm-hmm. And to think of that beautiful pattern of the whole, before you break it up and take the seeds out, that just made me happy. A lot of the vegetable ones too. That, gosh, of course, my mind is blank.
Yeah,
I marked
I didn't
some
mean
of
to
the
put you on the spot.
I marked some of the photographs, and but fennel. You've got a lot of wonderful fennel.
Oh, there's a beautiful fennel salad in there that uses all the parts. It uses fennel and fennel pollen and the blossoms and the seeds and as well as the the bulb itself. And it's just a different. If you're able to do that, it's really nice.
Yeah.
And even if you just do part of it, that's all right too.
Yeah. Which I want to go just because I learned so much. Your book, Vegetable Literacy, taught me about all the herbs and the history of the vegetables and how vegetables have evolved. And you must look at this photograph. These photographs in this book are so rich. It is sublime. But tell us what you did in this magnificent vegetable literacy. What do you mean, vegetable literacy?
I had on my desktop a folder, and I kept putting things in it over the years. And that had to do with this subject, by which I originally meant, what can we learn about vegetables themselves? In particular, what families contain what vegetables and how are they related? Because if we understand that, then we're much more free to improvise or to look at a leaf and say, aha, that must be spicy, or it's this because I recognize that family.
Or the square stems of the mint family.
Yeah. You recognize qualities about them. So I chose 12 families that have most of the edibles and researched them. And it was so much fun to do. Plus, I had to grow all these vegetables to make sure I really understood them from the ground up.
And also you talk about the various herbs and spices. Yeah,
and they're interesting because most of the herbs are in the mint family, but the umbellifers have tons of herbs. And they're all the ones that begin with C, like coriander and chervil and caraway and cumin, but also aniseed and cilantro, parsley, fennel, dill. Is dill in there? No, maybe. I can't remember if dill's in there or not, but they all have dill is in there because they have these beautiful umbels for flowers.
Oh, yes.
And you can use these herbs, and you can take the same vegetables in that family, like a carrot, which is pretty ordinary, and you can lead it in so many different directions.
Yeah. Well, we're speaking today with Deborah Madison, who's written 14 cookbooks, and they're just beautiful. Thank you so much. You mentioned that you are now, you, as part of your research on vegetable literacy, you grew them all.
Well, I tried.
Yeah.
Some I had better success with than others. I'm not very good with the broccoli and cauliflower. That's what farmers are for. They're the professionals,
But
I did struggle with cardoons and artichokes and and lots of herbs. I did grow out anise and cumin and all of those. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was really fun to do.
One of your early books that is still a bestseller, Local Flavors, Cooking and Eating from America's Farmers Market. So you, with your own experience as a small farmer, you worked when you got here with the Santa Fe Farmers Market, and then in your research for this beautiful book, you visited about
100 markets.
Yeah.
At that time in 1990, 1991, I didn't think really that that people would be interested in the Santa Fe Farmers Market cookbook.
Well,
we finally have one,
Yeah.
But, there were, this was a very new movement in the United States. There were 3,000 markets. Now there's over 9,000 markets.
Wow.
And everything was volunteer at that time. Now people have paid positions. There are even PhDs, who run markets and get salaries and so forth. So it was a different time. But I thought the phenomena of these pop-up markets that happened every weekend across the country was so wonderful. I want to know more about them. So I was a traveling teacher a lot during those years, so I always coordinated my classes with a farmer's market so I could go, and then sometimes I just went, to see what a farmer's market in the Midwest offered, or the Northeast, or the Southwest, or the Southeast, or California, or wherever.
So you've been following this for many years. What have you learned about big ag? Big agriculture's relation to farmers markets?
There's no relation in big ag and farmers market. Farmers markets are unique because they interface, they connect with the small farmer, the local farmer. Even in California, farmers markets may be huge. The farms may be far from the market, like in LA, they have to be, but they're small farms. This is not big ag. Totally different. It's a totally different consciousness around them. I think much better flavor, much better quality. And I honestly think if we want to protect ourselves at all from what's happening with GMOs and big ag, we have to really go to our farmers market and support them.
Yeah. And also, another way of supporting those small farmers is our own Department of Agriculture has a program that if you sell a certain amount of, maybe it's $1,000 worth of tomatoes or lavender or whatever, they will then come in and help you. They will actually loan you or give you money to become to expand your small farming enterprise.
Oh yeah, and we do that at our farmers market too. Through the Santa Fe Farmers Market Institute has long given grants to farmers.
Oh, that's great.
To try things I haven't had a chance to try before, like storage over the winter, or grow tunnels, or a different kind of irrigation equipment, for example. It's very important.
How are we doing with sustainability in small farming?
I don't know. That's one of those words like fresh.
Yeah, okay.
For me, I can't even
it is a
go there.
buzzword.
And so is local, and all that stuff is,
Soil, there's another buzzword. But people need to know that soil is,
Soil's
the root of
at.
everything. You've got to have good soil.
Yeah, it is. And, words change. They become popular. They go in, they go out. And that's just what happens in America. But I agree. I mean, soil is fundamental. It's so important. And good farmers are growing soil, then they're growing food. In my book.
Oh, wow. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. One of the blessings of these books for me is that part of your message is it's not that hard to cook.
No, it's not. And I think that there's so many voices in this country that's telling us it's hard. It's really hard to cook.
You
can only get it in a box, and the expert has prepared everything for you, but you're going to put it together with their help. I mean, you don't need a box. You don't need all that. You just, you need to care. And it can be very easy. And
in effect, then, your message through 30 years of writing these books, what if you could tell my audience now, a New Mexico PBS audience, what do they need to know about what to eat, where to find it, how to prepare it?
Well, I think one thing I would say is we don't need to have everything all the time. And we have become that. That's what the supermarket's about. It's about everything all the time. The season is the season of the whole world. I would say see what's in your area, what's coming up, and just key into that. You're not going to have so much variety, but I don't think it matters.
And also the strawberries that the supermarkets feature in December are not very flavorful.
Well, any time in the supermarket, if you ask me,
Yeah.
they're not very flavorful, and they're also the top list on the Environmental Working Group's list of foods you should not eat because of the pesticides. Strawberries are at the top. We're not doing ourselves any favor.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
sad thing. So I guess I would suggest, try to grow something. Have a fruit tree, grow an herb, something you can go out and pick, because that will nourish you
Yeah.
the way nothing else will. Go to your farmer's market, talk to friends, maybe swap. There are lots of things we can do, but I think once people do taste the flavor of really fresh, well-grown food, they don't want to go back.
Yeah, it's true.
It may be hard to take that first taste, especially with an egg, for example, because they're so much more expensive. Once you eat a really good egg, you don't ever want to have a bad egg again. Why would you?
And I grow tomatoes, and there's just no comparison.
Yeah.
Sun-ripened, right, warm from the vine.
I know. This is the first year I didn't grow tomatoes because I was on book tour, so I didn't really have time when I got back pretty late from that to get them in. So this year I'm buying everything at the farmer's market.
Yes.
Which is fine, but I do miss having a few tomato plants to go pick from.
Well, you're doing a book tour for In My Kitchen, and what do people ask you the most, besides, thank goodness, now that you've told them you're not a vegetarian? They're not asking you, are you getting enough protein? But what are people interested in?
I think, there is a part in the beginning, in the introduction of that book, which most people don't ever read introductions, but I wrote a long introduction about what I've learned. Being a vegetarian cook, which really is the same thing that you'd learn being any kind of a cook, and just some pointers, some things to pay attention to. You don't need 10 knives, you need 4, but you need to keep them sharp. You need to give yourself some space to work in. It's not really a great idea to apologize all over the place, because
I did read it, and that was so wonderful. You said, they don't know what you were aiming for. Don't serve someone something you've labored over and then apologize for it.
Right.
Let them have the experience of it. They're probably going to love it.
Right, and their experience is different from yours.
Yeah.
You've been on your feet, you shopped, you've been thinking about it, you've been smelling it, you're hot, all those things. They're coming to it fresh. And I did learn a lesson at Green's about apologizing, that you can actually kind of insult somebody or hurt their feelings. If they tell you that this soup was the best soup I've ever had, you just say thank you.
Yeah.
Because if you try to argue with them that it's not, they're going to feel kind of stupid and bad, and then maybe angry, and they don't want to come back. But this is a very not apologizing. It's a hard lesson to learn, and I'm still struggling with it.
Well, another lesson that you've learned through 14 cookbooks is how to write a successful cookbook. And I'm really interested, through the Santa Fe workshops, you are going to have in September a workshop entitled Secret Ingredients for Cookbook Success. And you're inviting people who've been thinking about writing a cookbook, who are working on one, to come to the workshop, and you'll give them the benefit of your experience with 14 very successful cookbooks.
and other people's experience too, because there are many ways to publish a book. You can go through a university press, a big press. You can self-publish. You can, do all the. There are many approaches, and it depends on the kind of book you want. Whether you just want to write something for your family, or you want to write a major cookbook, and other people will be coming into the class to share their experience, like Cheryl Jameson, Doug Merriam, and who have taken very different approaches to writing cookbooks.
Yes. And also I wanted to mention your website, which is simply your name, DeborahMadison.com.
Yeah.
Because you have a wonderful blog there. You have a lot of background on some of the books, and it's just a really fun website. You're very busy.
I am this week anyway.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Yes. Which is your favorite? It's like asking a kid. Which
It is. It's like asking which is your favorite
Which your
child.
favorite
you know.
child?
I actually really like In My Kitchen, and mainly because I'm using it a lot, and probably it's the newest. But I love vegetable literacy because I learned so much writing it, and I enjoy reading it. I mean, I have to refresh my memory because not all this sticks.
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah.
And I love local flavors because to me, going around and experiencing the foods at all these farmers markets did teach me about what is the flavor of Wisconsin, what is the flavor of this place or that. And it really does, that's how you find out.
So we'll just show some of the books again. This is
Okay.
Local Flavors, Traveling Around America, Eating at the Local Farmers Market. In My Kitchen, your newest book, full of extraordinary stories, too, and background on these recipes, great recipes. And this work of art, Vegetable Literacy, I won't go through, but inside it is full of photographs of this quality.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
really a wonderful resource. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lorene.
Our guest today is Deborah Madison, author of all these beautiful books. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
It's my pleasure, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You bet. And I'm Lorene Mills. I'd like to thank you, our audience, for being with us today on Report from Santa Fe. We'll see you next time.
Past archival programs of Report from Santa Fe are available at the website reportfromsantafe.com. If you have questions or comments, please email info@reportfromsantafe.com. Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.